My name is Victoria. I'm 36 years old and I work from home. My husband Owen and I got married 3 years ago. I was already 33 years old at the time and we wanted to have a kid, so we went to a hospital for fertility therapy. The test results were clear and we were relieved, but no matter how long we waited, we couldn't have a child. I thought it was time to give up, so I talked to my husband about it, and this is what he told me. But my mom said I should definitely have a child. I sighed as my husband said this with a puzzled look on his face. Owen was a wonderful husband on the whole, but he was a mommy's boy who believed everything his mother said. I didn't get along well with Lucy, my mother-in-law. Owen was the eldest son and had a younger sister, but Lucy adored Owen very much. My sister-in-law didn't like that and left her parents' house when she was young. My husband's job required him to relocate frequently, but when we married, he was working near my in-laws' house. However, when we rented a property near my in-laws, Lucy would frequently visit us on Owen's days off. Even while I was working from home, she would drop by for whatever reason. She was constantly interfering with my job and criticizing me about how poorly I folded the laundry or cleaned the house. To say the least, it was annoying. Furthermore, every time we met, Lucy asked when she's going to see her grandchild. You must give birth to a boy. I don't want a girl. Her presence was stressing me out. I tried to explain the situation to Owen and get him to talk about it, but no matter how many times I told him, Mom just wants to be friends with you, Victoria, he only said optimistic things like that. What's the point of stressing out the person you want to be friends with? My husband was an optimist, and I was the type of person who deliberated, so I was drawn to the aspects of him that I lacked. In many ways, I thought we were balanced. Yet the gap between us had remained unbridgeable. However, my husband secured a new job 6 months ago, and we were finally able to move away from my in-laws' place. My parents' residence was closer to ours this time. My parents' property was surrounded by farmland, but the city where my husband's new office was located was very large and had a train connection, so it was classified as a regional city. And it was less than an hour's drive to my parents' house. I hoped that by moving, I would be free of most of my stress and be able to work more efficiently and comfortably. Then it turned out that I was pregnant. Owen and I hugged and rejoiced. I was worried about having a baby at an older age, but it was the pregnancy I had longed for. When we reported the news to my in-laws, Lucy's first words were, "It's a boy, right?" Despite the fact that Owen had told her that we didn't know the gender yet, she insisted that it had to be a boy. However, we discovered that it was a girl. When Lucy found out, she called me while my husband was away. "You're really useless. Why did you marry my son?" That's what she said to me. I cried alone because I was emotionally unstable, most likely owing to hormone imbalance. Owen came home and saw me crying, and I told him what had happened, but, "Are you saying it's my mom's fault?" He yelled at me, and I cried even more. But Owen took care of me and did the housework. I thought he'd be a good husband if my mother-in-law hadn't gotten involved. so I was able to have a safe birth. It was a month after the birth when I came home after returning to my hometown. I got into Owen's car, who came to pick me up, and went back to our house for the first time in a long time. And there was Lucy. I didn't think she'd come all the way to see our daughter, but she did. I had a bad feeling about this, but Owen wasn't worried. "My mom came to help us," he told me. Then, when Owen was nursing our daughter in the other room, Lucy took a box of cake from the fridge. "This is a present for you. I'm sure you didn't eat well in the countryside." The way she said it made me angry, but I managed to ignore it. "This cake cost $500. She handed me a box of cake. $500? I had never heard of such a cake before, so I couldn't help but shout it out. Lucy nodded and urged me to open it. I was curious about what a $500 cake would be like. I excitedly put it on the table and opened the box. But then I noticed the smirk on Lucy's face. When I opened the box, I found a cake that didn't look very much like a $500 cake. The cream was terrible, and the fruits on top appeared to be canned mandarin oranges. I wondered what kind of cake shop would sell such a poor quality cake for $500. I love sweets, and most cakes are delicious regardless of the price. And yet, this was the first time I had felt such disappointment when I opened the box. But there was more to it. I couldn't believe my eyes. When I looked up from the cake, I saw that Lucy was smiling at me. "What do you say? Did you like this $500 cake?" I was so mad that I threw the entire box of cake into the trash. "Get out!" I shouted, and Owen came into the living room, perhaps startled by my voice. Before I could open my mouth, Lucy cried to Owen, "Look what Victoria did to me!" Then she pointed at the trash can. Owen saw this and became furious. "Hey, look at what you've done. That was a cake that my mom worked very hard to make for you." I was about to inform him that Lucy claimed it cost $500, but before I could say it, "That's right, I made it especially for you. It's so beautiful that it's worth $500. I understood what was going on. That's right, a cake like that shouldn't cost $500. I wouldn't buy it even if it were only $50 or $5. Now the mystery was solved. There was no way the cake shop would allow such a rude plate. As I was convinced on my own, my husband said, "Victoria, apologize to my mom." My husband still seemed to always side with Lucy. As I was stunned, I heard the voice of my daughter, whom Owen had supposedly put to bed earlier, so I rushed to her. I heard some disturbance behind the door, but my daughter was more important to me at the time. When my daughter finally calmed down and fell asleep, I returned to the living room. I was surprised to find a message that said, "We're going out to eat, so you should reflect on what you've done." I wasn't sure if I could continue to live with my husband. But I wasn't sure if I should ask my parents for help, and I didn't know where else to turn. As I reflected on this, I grew interested and glanced at the trash can where I had thrown away the cake. It was still there, with no sign of having been opened. I thought better of it and took a picture of it. I called my parents and told them the whole story. and my father said he would come pick me up right away. I was sorry for my newborn daughter, but we had to move again. But I knew it was better for me and my daughter than staying here. Owen, who was supposed to have left to go eat, didn't come home and my father arrived earlier. As my father was loading my luggage into the car, Owen and Lucy returned. They seemed surprised that my father was there, but they started to get angry that my father was taking my stuff out. "Where are you going? Are you going to depend on your parents again? You're too old to go home and cry to your parents whenever something bad happens." His words were harsher than usual. Apparently, Owen had also been drinking. His face was red and he smelled of alcohol. The sight of him made me explode with anger. "How come you were out drinking right after we got home with our newborn daughter? You abandoned us. I don't want to be in the same house as you guys right now, so I'm going to my parents' house." Then Lucy, who also smelled of alcohol, interjected. "Oh my God, this intimidating wife should leave. She gets on my nerves every time." "That's right. I'll take my daughter with me as you wish, so please enjoy spending time with your precious son." When I stated this, Owen looked irritated, but I ignored him and went into my father's car. My father seemed to have suppressed his emotions and kept his mouth shut. The next day, I received a call from Owen. "Where are you? I was so surprised when I woke up and you weren't home." Oh yeah, I had forgotten about it because he didn't drink often. But Owen was the type of person who forgets things when he drinks. I sighed. "Don't you recall? You left me and our daughter starving and went out to eat with your mother yesterday. And you even came back home drunk. There's no way I'm going to stay there after what you did and said to me." My husband was astonished and alarmed. But I heard Lucy's voice behind, and my rage from yesterday returned. So Lucy stayed over. I'm not going back to the house where that insane person stayed. "What do you mean?" My husband's voice became huskier. "Even though she's a mother to you, she's a stranger to me. I'm tired after giving birth, and I don't have time to care about strangers. Whose fault was it that we couldn't have a child for a long time? Your mother visited us frequently, and the stress of her visits made it impossible for me to conceive. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten pregnant as soon as we moved and your mother stopped visiting us." I was relieved not to see Lucy, but she was there when I returned home with my daughter. This is too much for me. I couldn't stop myself because of all the hatred that had been building up, even though I knew I was being impolite. Then Owen yelled over the phone. "You're the worst woman I have ever met. Come home now, drop down on your knees, and apologize to my mom." I felt as though time had stopped when he said it. The next words that came out were, "Huh?" I couldn't believe what he was saying to me. I continued. "The only reason I'm here with my daughter is at your mom's request." I say coldly, and my husband sounds confused. "What do you mean?" "Your mom doesn't want a girl. She'd been telling me for a long time that I should have a son. Well, I wasn't sure how serious she was, but after seeing that cake, I was convinced." "What cake?" "Didn't you see the plate on the cake?" "What?" "The plate of the cake. I mean, did you even look at the cake itself?" I knew it. There was nothing else in the trash can where I had thrown away the cake the day before, so it must still be there. With that in mind, I instructed Owen to go look in the trash can in the kitchen. There's nothing in it. Could it be that she destroyed the evidence last night? Then ask your mom what the cake plate said and where she threw it away. Then I heard them talking on the phone. Lucy said she didn't know anything about the plate and that I was being paranoid. She refused to answer where she dumped the cake. I wondered what my husband would say. She says she doesn't know about the plate. My husband appeared to be losing heart, as I had predicted. I knew it. If you've seen such a thing, it would be a disaster for her. She'd get rid of it before you saw it, no matter how difficult it was, just to get rid of the evidence. I could tell my husband's voice was growing hazy. Behind my bewildered husband, I heard Lucy's voice. Why don't you just tell her to come home and be nicer to me? She's such a useless wife. Even Owen was trying to stop his mom from saying such a thing. I'll hang up the phone once and text you. Why don't you ask your mom to say it with you? Call me back when you've talked to her. With that said, I hung up the phone and sent all the pictures of the cake and plates to my husband. Within 30 minutes, Owen called and said he would be on his way here soon. I told him not to come. Your father should be here by now, so stay there. That's all I said and hung up the phone. Actually, my father was upset with Owen's attitude yesterday and called my in-laws. He had reported it to my father-in-law. My father-in-law, who didn't know about this, apologized and said he would go to Owen's place and talk to him. In the evening, my husband and in-laws came to my parents' house. As soon as they arrived, my husband got down on his knees to me. I had no idea about this or anything that had happened before. I never thought my mom would say such a terrible thing to you. I realized I had no feelings for my husband even as I glanced at him, who appeared to have transformed. Do you think you'll get away with just saying you didn't know anything? We discussed it when we lived in our previous home, didn't we? Yet you said your mother wanted to be friends with me and did nothing. My husband paled at my words. You also stated that your mother advised you that we should definitely have a boy. What was that? Do you believe everything your mother says? You don't need me since you prefer your mother to your wife, don't you? My husband shrugged at me with a pale face. No, it's not like that. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Then what did you mean? When I said this back to him, he became at a loss for words, looked down, and fell silent. I knew you'd choose your mother over your wife and daughter. A mother who adores her eldest son, a son who is a mommy's boy. I should have realized this sooner. No wonder your sister left home when she was young. I said with a sigh, and my husband countered. I'm not a mommy's boy. You're important to me too. Can you then cut ties with your mother? My husband then became silent. I sighed, and behind him, Lucy, who was forcibly brought in by my father-in-law, opened her mouth. What a thing to say! Owen and I are mother and son. There's no way I'm going to break off our relationships. My father-in-law admonished her, but she wouldn't stop. I didn't like you from the start. I wanted a younger bride for Owen. Huh? If that's the case, I'll cut ties with you right now. and I have the divorce papers ready. If we divorce, you and I will be strangers." My husband became pale and glanced at me as I said it. I would cut ties with anyone who would bother making a cake and writing something like this on a plate. I took out my phone and showed everyone in the room a picture of the plate with the words, "Take your daughter with you and leave." Who had not heard the details looked at it and yelled at Lucy with a pale face. "Don't tell me you did the same thing to her that you did to your daughter." I was surprised to hear that. Lucy had once written on her daughter's birthday plate, "I don't want a daughter." This is why she and her daughter grew apart. I realized that she really hated women. She must have believed that by eliminating the ladies near to her, Owen would regard her kindly. In fact, her son Owen was doing exactly what she wanted him to do. When I presented the divorce papers to my husband, he began to make excuses. "We've just had a baby, so we shouldn't get divorced, right? I know that Mom went a little too far this time. She was just jealous of you. You have to understand." Is that what you came here to talk about? I expected you to tell me you're cutting ties with your mother and beg me to come back home. I will never go back to that house. My father-in-law, who had remained pale and silent, then opened his mouth. "Owen, sign the divorce papers. My family is done. When I return, I'll divorce your mother as well." "What?" The unexpected words made Lucy turn around. "I thought about it several times before, but I thought it was too late for a divorce, and that I should just put up with it. But I've run out of patience with you doing this to other people's daughters. I want you to get a divorce and get out of my house." At the request of my father-in-law, Owen reluctantly signed the divorce papers. I received about $10,000 from my father-in-law as compensation. At first, I refused, but then he told me that he would deduct it from Lucy's share of the property, so I decided to take it gratefully. Lucy appeared to have leaned on Owen when my ex-parents-in-law divorced. However, he blamed her for what had occurred. Owen did not accept it, and the family was truly separated. Lucy, who had not worked since her marriage, was considering ways to generate money quickly. She got involved in virtual currency, which was recommended by someone, and lost all the money she got from the property division. Owen pays me a reasonable monthly child support payment, and I'm currently raising my daughter with the assistance of my parents. I am very happy that my daughter is growing up so well.